Evolution of the industry has changed to where record keeping is tremendously more important.
Made a new rule and everybody had to start keeping records.
Everything's documented.
Hello everyone, I'm Joe Dager, and at ApRecs I handle business development and assisted in creating our grower onboarding process. In the past, I have worked with companies on their lean journey, and most specifically, though my roots are in manufacturing, in the service end of the business. In software as a service type companies, the SaaS companies, I've always tried to make that second S, service, as big as the first S, software. Today will serve as a brief introduction to Lean and our kickoff for 2015. We are happy at ApRecs to provide a forum to promote Lean. Most of the examples will be from ApRecs, with some of them taking you behind the ApRecs philosophy as we are on our own Lean journey. Today we are going to spend about 5 minutes on each of these subjects and go through them rather quickly. Please feel free to ask any questions. Since we are recording this, I will have you muted, so raise your hand or type the question in the chat box. The introduction to Lean. Lean, for all intent and purposes, has evolved from the Toyota Production System, TPS. TPS was greatly influenced by Dr. W. Edwards Deming. We can complicate things and talk about many different things, but Lean can be applied in any business because it is more of a cultural thing and really rests on two basic principles: continuous improvement, Kaizen, the Japanese term, and respect for people. In most Lean thinking, we talk about Kaizen, or continuous improvement, which is exemplified in PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act, or it has been called the Short or Deming cycle. It is simply a method of continuous improvement. Ono, the guru of the Toyota Production System, came along and said, "There's no improvement without a standard." So in essence, SDCA was created. Recently, as innovation, design thinking have become the buzzword of the day, Eric Ries created the Lean Startup. It was based on build, measure, learn. It was his idea that you develop product and get it into the hands of the customer at its most minimum level, and leave the customer to decide the value and expand on that. I can argue that in a few instances, and in my thinking, and what I've learned from a Toyota guru in Europe, Graham Hill, that there was similar thinking within Toyota called Explore, Do, Check, Act, EDCA. I like that a bit better, as I believe that it offers a little more substance and guidance versus just the build, measure, learn thinking. So right or wrong, I base my Lean thinking on these three principles: standardization, improvement, and exploration. But PDCA is the glue. Without that mindset, without that continuous improvement mindset, it is difficult to traverse between the three. And I think successful companies have a mixture of all three. Some may be more innovative, Apple. Some may be more standard, Microsoft. But having a process in place for each, even the innovation side, is what makes Lean successful. When you think about a system, it is just a series of functions or activities within an organization that work together for the aim of the organization. Dr. Deming believed that the journey of continuous improvement requires the understanding of systems, which is emphasized in his own system of profound knowledge. The appreciation of a system involves understanding how interactions, feedback between all the elements of a system can result in internal restrictions that force the system to behave as a single entity that automatically seeks a steady state. It is this steady state that determines the output of the system rather than the individual elements. What all that says is we're really saying that the limited output of a single thing can determine the total output. Thus, it is the structure of an organization rather than the employees alone which holds the key to improving the quality of the output. Dr. Deming would say that 90% of the problems are process versus people issues. In Lean Thinking by Womack and Jones, the authors introduce 5 core concepts. Specify value from the standpoint of the end customer by product family. Identify all the steps in the value stream for each product family, eliminating whenever possible those steps that do not create value. Make the value creating steps occur in tight sequence so the product will flow smoothly toward the customer. As flow is introduced, let customers pull value from the next upstream activity. As value is specified, value streams are identified, wasted steps are removed, and flow and pull are introduced. Begin the process again and continue it until a state of perfection is reached in which perfect value is created with no waste. Understanding these 5 principles is a key in understanding Lean. Introducing the uses of food safety data and a little Lean thinking with that. In many document management systems, visual indicators are often non-existent. As Dr. Gwendolyn Galsworth said to me, if you are not visual, you are not Lean. At a glance, we should be able to determine the structure and path needed to find the required information. I often recommend implementing 6S, the predecessor was 5S, as one of the first steps in implementing Lean. Laying a solid foundation for improvement is imperative. Food safety data is handled by the food safety department, right? We have a food safety manual, food safety policy, food safety records, etc. And most employees think they have nothing to do with any of that unless they are in that department. Dr. Deming taught the quality folks years ago, and I'm going to flip it to the food safety data. If a company improves the way they handle records, food safety, field data, this will create better customer relations. It'll reduce workload. It'll help production, which can result in increased profits. You can measure many things with field data, with food safety data. This is just a short list, and it's just a starting point. Once you start using data, seeing data in use, there are endless opportunities on how it can be used. 5S was the norm for years. It is a systematic corrective action technique to clean up, get organized, and make this the way you do your business. 5S stands for sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain. In service organizations, the problems identified in 5S not only rob your organization's productivity, but oftentimes your customers. It wastes their time. How much time searching is spent for misplaced files or sifting through piles of paperwork on desk and in the computer? How much blame is put on computers and software because of the lack of organization? 5S was popularized by quality professionals to organize the workplace. It is a simple concept and can be symbolized by the outline of a tool on a wall where that tool should be placed when not in use. This simplicity is often hidden in digital work. 5S can serve as a handy tool for efficient data management of files and folders created and stored by organizations. Recently, safety has been added to make the 5S procedure 6S. In document management, I would recommend that security, trust, be used in lieu of safety. ApRecs views the 6S process as an integrated approach for productivity and security improvement. Arguably, 6S could provide the basis for your document management system. Think of your present document or computer filing system, and I'm going to use these 6S's just to kind of give you an example of what you could do today. Sort. You could create folders and subfolders to organize important data. Name folders and files appropriately for easy retrieval. Create one folder named temp to store temporary data. Clear the contents of temp folder regularly, if possible on a daily basis. Set and order. Ensure easy retrieval of data by viewing and by search. Create only 2 main folders, one for storing data for frequent use and the other for rare use. Create multiple subfolders to store a particular type of data. Limit subfolders at the next 2 sublevels to less than 5. Create searchable documents by tags. A very underused procedure. Shine is the third S. Think about managing data folders like you would any tool in the manufacturing facility. Allow for preventive maintenance review of folders on items such as revision requests, missing documents, and general use and access rights. Make sure proper backup procedures are installed. Security. Set use permissions across all folders on an as-needed basis to include the additions, changing, and importing and exporting of documents for internal and external purposes. Standardization. Integrate storage, retrieval, and cleanup tasks to create a unified process. Create a policy to follow the procedures discussed in Sort, Set and Order, and Shine. Create a version control process document that details naming, structuring, and maintenance schedule of files and folders, which can be served as a reference document. Sustain, the 6S. Track and monitor for adherence to the above. Conduct monthly audits to ensure that the set procedures are followed diligently. Document and publish the disk space usage data on a weekly basis. Many organizations will complete a 6S process without doing standardize and sustain. It is the act of standardization that drives sustainability. I have all this software behind me at my desk, right? And I never sustained half of it because I'd never standardized the use of it. Without these components, the gains that you create in the first 3 will be lost. Just as I said about the software behind the desk. Think of that. That was kind of EDCA when I bought that new software. I never went through the process of continuous improvement, what I did, and then standardization. So you can see the important parts of EDCA, PDCA, and SDCA, the relationships with them. And then when I start using the software, I can improve it through PDCA. So there's always relating through those 4 efforts. There's always interrelation between those 3 efforts. When a success system is implemented, it creates a visual workplace that allows for quick determination of current state. Workflow presence with SIPOC. SIPOC stands for Supplier Input, Process, Output, and Customer. They all need to be considered before you take any steps to improve your process. Detailing these elements in a SIPOC diagram is a great way to visually understand the process and unweave a flow diagram that looks like spaghetti. It is a way to realize if you have a process and you can explain it and that you have a standard process. The supplier. Do you know who your suppliers, the provider, internal and external? Who provides the input, the request for this process step? Input. What is the action that triggers the process? Process. This is the process step, the action that changes the input to an output. Output. What is the outcome? What does the receiver receive that is different than the input? How will this change the previous process step? Customer receiver. Who receives this process step? Even if you start with the end in mind, it is important to define building a process with a beginning and an end point before you begin. This does not mean you have to start on the start block. Often it is easier to start with the process steps and list them. Then you can go back and complete the missing blocks. I'd encourage you to leave some space to write things in between those process steps. But when completing a SIPOC, do not work just from left to right, though. It might help you to start with the customer or even your ultimate goal. You may be defining the process vertically through each process step, and then determine who is actually performing and receiving what. You're going to find gaps in the delivery, but remember, the first SIPOC that you create should be current state. If there's gaps, it is where a lot of handoffs are being performed poorly. Don't strive to correct it. Note it and put it somewhere else. Put a note on a board, future state. Because you're building a current state right now, not a future state. It comes later. There's a way this is getting done now. Define it and find out how it's getting done. You may also find, depending on the level of detail, you provide that the supplier may have been the customer the step before. This often happens in small companies, and though it can be an area that we look at to combine and simplify, it is just as often an area that we want to make the step visible, because it would be something like moving an item off of Gmail to Zendesk or something. Other times, the supplier and customer is a team and not an individual. Identify appropriately, and later we may find it to be something that is separated as a process step. That things happen inside a team. If you find a dramatic change, such as a request needs to be divided from the team to individuals, like I just mentioned, just end the SIPOC there with the multiple outcomes and customers noted, and start a new SIPOC for within the team. The key is to create a current state and to put it down in writing. Well, if you can't define what you do, you really don't have a process. Training within industry. As the Toyota production system was developed, TWI, training, within industry was there. A growing number of people in the lean community recognize their own struggles with lean rest in TWI's absence from most lean initiatives. TWI's influence can impact stability, standard work, of culture of improvement, sustainability, and respect for people. A little history real quick on TWI. During World War II, the United States shipped out our skilled workforces overseas to fight the war, the soldiers. Left behind was an inexperienced workforce. The government went out and hired industry experts to create a training program, TWI, to support a workforce that later became known as Rosie the Riveters. After the war, when the U.S. occupied Japan, they introduced their best business practices to help rebuild the Japanese industry. TWI was part of that. Most companies interested in implementing TWI training immediately see the potential benefits of job methods for improvement skills and of job instruction for the standardization of skills. On the other hand, these companies politely resist job relations training, stating that their supervisors have already taken a variety of training program on all those people issues. I would say the feedback from most attendees, from what I've heard and seen in all three TWI programs, always comment that the job relations segment is the most valuable to supervisors. The ability to train is one of the most important skills a supervisor must have to alleviate or eliminate common daily problems with production, quality, and costs, and promote worker safety and job satisfaction. Trained workers can increase the profitability of your company and even help to create an environment that encourages people to improve the way they do their jobs. You know, we always think about the job instruction, job relations, job methods. The module of program development is really important in TWI. Having the program development trainer focused on the objective of the business objectives of all this training. He focuses on the production of a product or a service delivered on time at the best quality, lowest cost, and making sure it's done safely. And to maintain individuals' focus on these business objectives, the program was made to be simple yet focused, not requiring a staggering amount of rules and procedures, but providing enough skill for the person to work their way through everyday problems they may face. In the ApRecs grower onboarding process, we look first for the leader of the process, our champion per se. Sometimes they're internal and external, a head of a field department, orchard management, and sometimes it's for the company orchards, and there's another one for external orchards. We train both the internal and external people so that they are willing to use the methods at the very beginning. They must understand the program. The next step is then the job relations. As they understand how to train growers, it makes it much more easier for us to reach out to growers, and with a combined effort between ApRecs and the internal and external staff at a Packer facility, we teach the job method to the growers and the job instruction. It really makes or breaks the implementation. The exercise of lean practice, failure mode, and effects analysis, FMEA, is a relatively painless activity that addresses a variety of issues that you may face in the future. It is a proactive document that brings to the surface where you may have concerns or gaps that need to be addressed. Creating a FMEA increases awareness of the exceptions that you choose to make and how it may affect your business. In simple terms, it allows you to anticipate problems so that you can take steps to reduce the risk. It is not just about product. There are many types of FEMAs to include the product, process, application, and service. Most literature will address the process side, but in the tree fruit industry, we can focus on the product side because that's still imperative. This is what drives regulation. A FEMA doesn't have to be complicated. It could just be blocks in an Excel spreadsheet that looks something like this. The attempt is to identify ways in which a change of some type may cause accidental problems. As a result, we have a way, or at least thought of a way, to address this problem beforehand. How much thought, how much planning we decide to do is determined by what is called an RPM number. That's a risk priority number, usually defined by a calculated weight that you assign to it. And it usually consists of three things: severity, occurrence, detection. FEMA is a living document, though. It is not meant to be once a year evaluation. I recommend having it part of everyday work, cascading through the organization in catchball, which is up and down the hierarchy of the organization. It can serve as a basis for continuous improvement efforts, ensuring that you're always addressing high-value tasks. It is an improvement program that directly corresponds to customer value. And I encourage even the smallest organizations to make use of some type of FEMA. It doesn't need to be complicated. But what it does for you, it provides that systematic way of identifying and highlighting the risk that you may incur. When something happens, it is much easier to react if you have thought of the situation before. You also know from your evaluation on how serious the problem may turn out to be. Who needs to be notified right away? Risk management, though, is not about identifying and solving every risk. It is directed at identifying, understanding every risk. It simply puts you in control versus having to react to the moment. In our upcoming months, we will be concentrating on a few more specific areas. Our idea is to delve deeper into TWI, training within the industry, success in your data, CAPA, corrective action, preventive action, and topics such as that. We will also be hosting an AgX Winter Conference Series. Though not exactly lean, it does have very similar characteristics. It is a non-promotional series, not about the ApRecs platform. As I said, the knowledge can be applied to any system. This is not a sales demo. It is simply how to go from looking at food safety data in a reactive way, from compliance to awareness to opportunities. We typically look at this data from a lens of compliance, audits, collecting and storing records. We're going to show you a different way, how to bring this data to life through awareness and use, and from a strategic viewpoint to meet business objectives. We invite you to join us for this 3-part webinar series. There is a cost for the series. However, I'm happy to email you a discount code for the entire cost and a free ebook on Will Values Matter at the end of today's program. So this concludes for today. Can I answer any questions that you might have?